Hey, everybody. I'm talking to Parissa Behnia. She's an executive coach, a speaker, and the author of Modern Badass Tales from the Leadership Front. She's also a very good friend of mine. Here we talk about perfectionism. It's something that shows up for me and for her and for the clients that we work with. And our conversation covers the compulsion to get things right and leave no room for mistakes or learning. We cover forgiveness and compassion for ourselves when we do get things wrong and the direct impact that that forgiveness and compassion can have on the quality of our lives. We talk about being attached to outcomes and the choice to care a little bit less and let more things go. She also gives us a few tactical things that you can do to help yourself in the moments when your perfectionistic tendencies want to make themselves known and take over. And in the show notes, you can get links to her website and her LinkedIn and her book if you want to dive into the modern badass mindset, which is her way of describing the people who are change makers and visionaries, but are often seen as difficult and disruptive. I can't relate to that at all. Enjoy the show. Hi, Parissa.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so happy to have you here. A second time, actually. And that's why you're here, because you and I recorded a podcast episode a few months back.
Right.
And I always listen to the episodes before I send them off to my editors. And I was listening to it and I listened to it, I think 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times. And all I could think to myself was, gosh, this didn't go the way I wanted. And I think it's because I didn't set this up right. I think it's because I didn't do this right. And I sat with the episode and I thought, how am I going to tell Parissa I can't publish this? I don't feel comfortable publishing this and it's my fault and blah, 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 blah. And when I finally sort of confessed my sins to you about why the episode hadn't gone live, you said first, well, do you want to do it again? And I realized, oh, yeah, we can. And then you said, this is really interesting. Well, actually, why don't you say what you said when I brought this to your attention?
So what I said to you was it's a very meta example in terms of the work that you and I do, not only with and for ourselves, but with and for our clients. The types of people that I work with, the types of people that I know that you work with, these are these high performers, these people that are so incredibly hard on themselves, are harder on themselves than they are on anyone else. And hello, physician, heal thyself. I am
Yes.
harder on myself than I am on anybody else. And there is a gift in saying do over, right? Who's going to take us to jail for deciding to re record a podcast episode? And so this is a beautiful invitation for us to walk our talk. If we tell other people not to be so hard on themselves, then why can't we take that same invitation for us as well? So again, beautiful meta conversation about the joy of saying yes and instead of no but.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we are doing it again. And the topic of what we're talking about today is that perfectionist, high achieving, being hard on ourselves, can't have mistakes. Oh, but also I'm a learner. I want to learn and I want to get better. And how those two sort of parts of our personality sit next to each other, because the learner wants to learn. And, in learning, you got to trip over yourself and you got to make mistakes. But the perfectionist high achiever wants to do good, look good, be good, is like, oh no, I left the comma out of that one part of my sentence in my newsletter, which I do every time I send a newsletter out. There's a spelling error and a word missing. And so let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to call it perfectionism. You can use whatever term you want to use, but I'd like to talk about it because it's rampant and it is alive and well in very well-intended, capable people, right?
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
this thing about perfectionism and then desire to learn at the same time. In a perfectionist ideal world, they will have a very steep learning curve about whatever thing they want to do next. In their mind, they do it perfectly, they're done with it, and then they're on to the next thing. But And so that's how they reconcile perfectionism with learning. It's like, okay, I'm done learning this, and it's time for me to learn something else. What is like a kryptonite for a perfectionist is, crap, you mean I have to try this again? And it's not that they're afraid. They don't lack courage. It's the, I can't believe I didn't get it right the first time.
Oh, if I had a nickel for every time I have said that in my life, and how many things I have dropped and stopped doing because it didn't show up right the first time.
Yep.
Um, I would be an amazing guitar player at this point if I had stuck with guitar. I started at 14, but I just couldn't get it right. And so I've absolutely had that experience. So okay, I want to start by asking you a question and get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you think is behind the need to get things right? That like that compulsion, that like for me, it can be unrelenting sometimes, and it has a scale. It's not always like that for everybody. But for me, it can feel like that sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. What do you think is behind that need?
Oh my gosh. Uh, Self-worth is the thing that's coming to mind for me, and that might be a ham-handed way of describing it, but if I don't get it right, if I never get it right, what does that say about me? And it's not to say that people don't think they have value, but this idea of, because I couldn't do it or because I failed, uh, there's an attachment to their identity, and also, speaking for me, it's an attachment to my identity. When I have failed at things, it has taken me years and years and years to get over it, and I mistakenly attach my value as a human, as a person, to whatever thing that may have gone pear-shaped.
Yeah. You used two words. So one is the self-worth piece, which I want to explore a little bit. And then the other piece is the word attached, because I think, so I'm just, let me start with self-worth. So I agree. I think, and I'm doing this from my experience and then from what I've been able to uncover with clients over the years, is that self-worth plays a role. And you're right. It's not that we're walking around thinking we have no worth. We're often pretty clear on our worth and the value that we bring, and we know what we can do, and I know what I'm good at. And yet there's some piece of us that, for me at least, that can feel very exposed when my mistakes are visible. And that exposure leaves me with this false feeling of, oh no, I'm in danger, or oh no, someone will have something to say. And what if what they have to say is true?
Ooh.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
That's like the fear, right?
Yeah.
It so in the work that I do with the people that I call modern badasses, the change agents, the visionaries, the disruptors, the people that break shit and build or rebuild it in new and different ways. One of the things that's hardest for them to learn is that they don't have to be Superman or Wonder Woman all the time. That it is perfectly welcome and often preferable for them to be Clark Kent or Diana Prince instead. So, this idea of mortality is very difficult for some high performers, high achievers, perfectionists to accept. And so what? We're mortal. You know, we all bleed, right? If we were to cut ourselves, we all bleed. If we bump against the coffee table, which we all have in our lives, we will develop a bruise. There isn't anything inherently better that we bring to the table. And what if, in accepting our mortality, we actually perform even better than what we would perform at if we were doing everything on our own? What if we were allow ourselves imperfection in pursuit of what we believe is audacious or amazing or whatever that next big thing is, because we have shared with everyone that we are mortal and that we are flawed or we are not doing things as well as we could. That's the invitation. It's a scary invitation, and it's the invitation just the same.
Yeah. It makes complete sense intellectually to allow ourselves to just be, so that I think for me, I often say when I'm at ease and when I have accepted who I am and who I'm not, then I'm free to be myself instead of proving myself. And I think in the need, the desire, the want, the compulsion, whatever, to not make mistakes, I am proving myself. There's a proving and a performative behavior that goes along with it, which isn't natural. It's
No,
not, right?
yeah, sorry to jump in there.
Okay,
I got
please.
excited. It's, everyone can see that it's false. Everyone can see that there is this bravado that we are bringing to the table. And in some of the talks I give, I like to joke that it's an oversized fig leaf. No one believes that you're packing heat. Okay. Okay. So as soon as we, to your point, as soon as we see and be who we are, and we share that with other people, then everything becomes more easeful. So it's the let's take out the intellectualizing it, because you're right, on an intellectual level it's really easy to understand. It's also exhausting to pretend you're packing heat.
Mm.
Okay, it is. So let us remove that extra barrier. Let's remove that yoke that we have put around our neck. And again, the counterintuitive truth is that you can go further faster because you have decided to remove the yoke of perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah. The other word that you used, well, I keep writing things down, but the other word that you use, I want to explore a little bit, is the word attached. And I think attachment. And again, I think of myself and I think of my clients and how we can get very attached to the outcomes that we want. And that when the outcomes don't occur in the way that we want, then we find a way to blame. Usually it's ourselves. Typically it's ourselves, right? And I know for me, the first place I go is like, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? I mean, I know for recording our first episode, I was scrutinizing how I asked the questions, wondering, could I have asked it different to elicit a different response? Oh, I didn't hear her say that. I should have asked this instead. I mean, I really overanalyzed it to the point of making it no fun for myself. And the attachment to how we think things should be, for me and for a lot of just people in the world, forget just my clients. Like I see this all over the place, right? The attachment to how we think things should be can totally eclipse one, the experience of what we're doing. So the learning, the joy of, feeling free in something, just the joy of whatever it is we're doing. It can eclipse that, but it can also eclipse our ability to see, oh, I could have done it this way and made it 10 times better, and let me just do that, right? We can't let things go and then move on. It makes me stuck. That attachment keeps me stuck.
Yeah, the attachment to an outcome is a killer. And and I know you and I have talked about this quite a bit, is what if we found joy in play? What if we found joy in experimentation? What if the thing that we attached the most value to was the willingness to try and detach from whatever the outcome was of whatever it is that we tried? Because it turns out every outcome is perfect. You might not like the outcome,
Right.
that's fine. And every outcome is perfect because that becomes the input to whatever it is that we decide to do next. And so if we lean into play, if we lean into experimentation, then it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It becomes easier to detach from the outcome. One of the things I say quite a bit is, let's go back to kindergarten or pre-K or first grade. When we were finger painting or when we were watercoloring, we weren't trying to be CEO of art class.
Maybe you weren't.
We don't try to be CEO of art class when we're in the first grade, right? All we're doing is that we are bringing home this watercolor or this finger painting, and the adult at home, the grandparent, whatever, said, "Oh, honey, this was a beautiful thing. What did you create?" And you say, "Oh, well, it's a picture of our family." But if it looks like four indistinct blobs, the adult isn't going to say to the child, "No, it's not. It's four indistinct blobs." The adult is going to say, "Oh my gosh, you're right. This is a picture of our family." Because that's what the child sees in their mind's eye. They are having enjoyment in the creation. It really didn't matter if they actually made a picture of the family or delivered four blobs of color instead.
Yeah. Yeah, that letting go of the attachment to the way things turn out, it sounds wonderful and beautiful. And Parisa, in a lot of parts of my life, I'm able to do it. Like there are absolutely places in my life where I'm like, I'm here for the experience. I'm good if this doesn't work. I'm going to try this out. I actively choose to have something be experimental. And then there are moments where it's unacceptable. I can't. And I can get very intense about something. In fact, I just had this experience yesterday with a group of clients. We do not really coaching, but it's more facilitated discussion around real issues that are happening for them. And this is a company that hires really the best of the best people. Like these people have come from like high levels of customer service, and they all identify, I used to use the word identity earlier on, but they all identify as high achieving, excellent. They're excellent at what they do. They want to be perfect. They want to get it right. The stakes are often high in the work that they do. Yet their organization is still working itself out. It's new. And so it's kind of chaotic. It's a little startup-y. It's a little messy. And so the perfectionist wants things to be in order, just have it in order so I can get my job done because I know it needs to be done, but the circumstances are not allowing me to do that. And so my suggestion was, and I changed my language, but the first thing I said was, since you can't change the bigger organization on your own, you're going to have to wait it out. Maybe you can find a way to care a little bit less.
Mm.
And all of them bristled. Like I could see their faces and I was like, okay, wrong language. How about instead of caring less, we could think about what it means to let go a little more.
Mm.
And that calmed their nervous systems a bit. But even that was a discussion, like the learning to just let go. And I mean, even let go of like little things. Like if I call my dog and I need her to come and she's out there sniffing on something and it's not super urgent, but I wanted her to come and it's like, oh, I did this wrong. I didn't say it right. I need to get, I just let it go all the way clear through. That client didn't work out. That program the speech I gave, oh, I missed the word. I did it. It's recorded, all the things. Can you just say a little bit more about letting go and how you see that showing up for yourself in moments where you've been able to let go and what that's done for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like this is an iterative process. I I don't know, in all honesty, that I will ever be good at letting go completely. What I am very good at is seeing it happen in the moment and caring for it. So I know what my triggers are. I know what's going to make me crazy. I know the what environmentally happens that makes me go to like 10 out of 10 or 11 out of 10 to riff on Spinal Tap. Uh, and if I'm caring for those environments, then I tend to not be in situations where I have to remind myself to let go. So, how good are we in the knowing of ourselves and what our triggers are, and how do we care for the triggers as they may be triggering to say, oh, okay, I've been down this path before. Here's what's happened previously. Here's how I know how to care for it because of who I am as a person. And even that I don't always get right. But this idea of forgiveness, right? This is where forgiveness comes in. Oh my gosh, I'm mortal. I forgive myself for being mortal. There's the, and that's why I say, who's going to take me to jail? Who's going to take us to jail if we were going to record this podcast episode? No, nobody, right? Like, it's okay. It's okay. You and I are good. We have set aside the time to do this. I forgive myself for being mortal. It is okay that this outcome wasn't necessarily the outcome that I preferred. What is the joy, or what is the beauty in it? And then a couple of years ago, I was in an intensive, and there was a woman who was leading an embodiment exercise, and there were people in the Zoom room that maybe aren't as flexible or whatever, and she said, it you don't have to get it right. Messy is sexy. And so that, I'm like, oh, she's right. Messy is sexy. There is no one right way of doing lots of things. There isn't even a perfect tree in nature. So if there's no perfect tree in nature, why are we creating these unfair standards for us in terms of how we live?
Yeah. You said forgiveness, and the word that also came up for me when you said forgiveness was compassion for myself,
Mm.
right? And I think those two can often go hand in hand. What I notice sometimes, again, I'm speaking for both me and what I've seen in my work, is that when we forgive ourselves, when we have compassion, when we say, you know what, it's okay, I'm human, I'm mortal, I made a mistake. Sometimes that gets conflated with, I'm letting myself off the hook.
Mm.
I'm going to get complacent. I'm taking the easy road. I didn't work hard enough and I'm just making excuses.
Mhm.
And to that, I just say, no. That compassion doesn't mean we don't have accountability. Compassion doesn't mean we don't look at that. I don't look at what I've done and where the mistakes maybe were made, or how the mistake came to be, or whatever, and work to change myself moving forward. It simply means I forgive myself in the moment so that I can move forward. Otherwise, I'm just stuck in a spiral of, I fucked that up and I'm so bad and everyone's going to notice and they're going to agree.
Yeah, and what's bubbling up for me is, you said compassion just now, and you were drawing that distinction. Compassion isn't a get out of jail free card. Compassion isn't excuse. Compassion is exactly, I have empathy. It is okay that this happened. What's not okay is to say, well, it happened the first time, or I fucked this up, or whatever it is, so consequently I'm never going to do it again. Then that's tapping out. That is, again, finding an excuse to not do it. I have a very, I would even say, negative level of tolerance. I was about to say low. I'm like, no, let's not lie. I have negative tolerance for tapping out. I have negative tolerance for excuses. Let's at least try. And if it turns out that we're not good at it, then that's fine. At least let us at least have tried. But to tap out after a first attempt, or to tap out because we think we're going to fuck something up, so it's better to tap out early than to do something and fuck it up, then uh that I can't. I don't have the headspace for that.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible, from your perspective, to curb our need or totally eradicate the need that we have to get things right all the time? That's the question. Yeah. Do you think it's possible to curb the need or eradicate that need to get things right so that we can just always be in a place of, I'm learning, I'm improving, I'm iterating, the way you said? How possible do you think that is?
Look, we're having a conversation about compassion and the human experience of that we're mortal. So is it possible 100% of the time? No, it's not. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And when we have a better awareness of who we are as people, we can choose to create the environment where we feel okay in the event that something goes pear-shaped.
Hmm.
So when I say environmental factors is, do I feel like this group of people that I'm working with, are we aligned in terms of what the mission is? Do I have an understanding and respect for who my colleagues or what my colleagues' values are? It doesn't have to be matchy matchy, it doesn't have to be paint by numbers. If I know what's important to you and you have an understanding of what's important to me, then we have a way of engaging with each other so that we always feel like we are 100% supportive of one another, even when things go 100% pear-shaped. It's really taking the time to get alignment and agreement. And once we do that, it doesn't matter if something is a quote unquote fuck up, because we're all aligned, we're all in agreement on what it is that we're trying to do together. So we find ways to continue to support one another. And there is something energetically beautiful that happens that even in the midst of a screw up, um, it feels better to acknowledge and support than it is to always feel like, you're hitting it out of the park 100% of the time. Let's acknowledge it. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Neither are you.
Yeah. I like how you put that, creating the environments in which we are safe to mess things up. And um, you also used a word earlier. You said, I know what my triggers are. So I can work to be with those triggers. I'm not saying it exactly the way you said it, which
No,
was far better, but the point is understanding yourself and knowing yourself enough to know what are the situations where I have the propensity to hold the stakes as very high, to make this really intense, to not want to let go, to not want to let myself make a mistake. What are those circumstances? Who is involved in those circumstances? And who am I going to be in that situation? And you're talking about just self-awareness, really, on a very deep level. And that's my jam. I mean, that's you're singing my favorite song. And it's important to do the work to understand who we are at that level so that we can stay unstuck. We are forgiving of ourselves, because when we do that for ourselves, when I do that for myself, Parissa, I'm much more able to do it for other people. My level of tolerance or intolerance that I have for me directly translates into everyone I engage with. And I know that there are people out there that say, no, I give everybody everything and I'm caring for everybody. And
bullshit.
nope, I'm sorry. It's impossible to give what we don't have. I can't buy you a diamond bracelet if I can't afford a diamond bracelet for myself. Right? We have to do first within. And so when I hear people say, no, I'm always about making other people feel better, and they put themselves out. And to me, that feels performative and also very exhausting and not very forgiving and not very compassionate. And so I have to put awareness on what are my triggers? Where are those moments where I know that when I do this, I'm going to get really intense about it. And how can I be with myself, allow myself to be calm, have conversation, just even having the conversation with you about how I didn't love the first episode felt really uncomfortable for me. One, I didn't want you to feel insulted, right? That was like big for me. You're my friend, you're my peer. I respect you. I didn't want you to feel insulted, but mostly I had to admit that I didn't feel I did a good job. And but I was in good company.
What's really interesting is that because I actually opened the Pandora's box. I was like, hey, where's, what's going on with that? And then you were beautifully vulnerable. And as you were sharing it with me, you know what I was thinking? You're going to laugh. Is I was a really craptastic, shitty guest. I did not set Zovig up for success. What the fuck was wrong with you that you couldn't? This no joke. I was like, oh my gosh, it was my fault, and I was processing all of that. And in that, and then as you and I were like talking about it and you were sharing a little bit more, it really was of the, I'm like, well, let's just do it again.
And the answer was simple, right? And in that suggestion, there was forgiveness. There was, okay, let's let that go. Let's do it again. There was so much wrapped up in just that one small suggestion. And my shoulders dropped and I thought, oh yeah, we could do it again.
Yeah.
And it was such a simple thing, but to sort of walk around and through my life and realize I can do this again. Not just this show. I can try this again. And I think I forget to give myself that I forget to give myself that luxury.
100%. And actually, the intuitive hit I got in this moment is, as you know, I am a rabid Orange Theory fan. I've
Yes,
been going to Orange Theory for like 9 bajillion years now. It feels like almost 6 years. And where I was is in the beginning is radically different from where I am today. And the only way that you can get stronger over time is that you have tiny tears in your muscle, and that's how you build muscle.
yeah,
What you and I experience where we say, oh my gosh, that, I really screwed that up, or, this was a setback, or I messed that up. What if we were to look at it as the way building strength actually looks? We had a tear in our muscle,
that's
and
good.
over time, that makes us stronger. I just made that shit right up.
I
That
love that. I love it. That's a great, is that a metaphor? I think that's a metaphor. Or maybe it's an analogy, but it's
or what?
excellent. It makes total sense. Yeah, you have to break something down sometimes in order to build it up. That includes us. And coming back to the worthiness thing, I am worth that. I am worth the chance to ask, hey, can we do this again? Would you mind giving me a little more of your time to do this one more time and try it again? I am worth my own time to try things again. Um, and and it's okay if others don't agree. I think that's the last half of the sentence, right? Is that I can mess things up. I can forgive myself. I can be imperfect or mortal, as you're use. I love that word. I'm mortal. And it's okay if others still judge it, have opinions about it, don't like it. I'm not their preference. And I think that's the bigger part of the work is okay, if I'm like sitting on a mountaintop, yeah, I forgive myself. I love myself. I'm great, I'm compassionate, all the things. As soon as you start adding people into the mix and the potential of their stories about who you are and what you're worth and all of that, then I can start to get muddled. I can see others starting to get muddled when they add in the variables of other people. And I always like to add at the end of the sentences, I can do this. It's okay. And it's also okay if they don't agree. And being able to sit in that and know that if you were not okay with it and you said, I don't have time. I'm really annoyed that this didn't work. Zovig, like I would have said, I'm really sorry. My apologies. And that would have had to be enough. And I would have had to sit with the discomfort of someone being unhappy with me, which I think often I think often that is the driver of what causes us to try to be perfect all the time is we don't want to upset others. We don't want them to think we're bad. We're not good enough. We're not smart. We're not whatever. That potential discomfort, learning to sit in that and move through that and be okay with that and be okay with ourselves through that is, that's like next level awareness.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one thing for us to know how to manage ourselves, but when other people are around and we may be susceptible to whatever they're bringing to us energetically, um, it is 100% okay if they feel totally differently about whatever is the same thing that we might look at. So our neighbors, uh, their politics are somewhat different from mine. I'm not going to get into what makes it different. Or that's not what
Yeah.
this platform is. Uh, and it's important for me to always show up in curiosity about what drives how they see policy, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm interested in changing their minds. It gives me an understanding of who they are and what's important to them. And for me to love them more, even when we will completely disagree about the same exact thing for perpetuity. And that is the point of arrival is I'm not interested in changing someone's mind. I'm too old, right? I can't. I just don't have the attention span to do it. What I'm more motivated in is understanding where they might be, helping them understand where I am. And it is okay if we never actually meet in the middle, if we
Mm-hmm.
end up just being completely apart. I'm good with that. It might be painful in some instances more than others. And it's okay because we are all free to do and think and as we wish and all the things.
Yeah. I'm going to jump back into the conversation for a moment. When I asked you, do you think it's possible to curb our need to want to get things right all the time or to be the best or be perfect? And you said, no, ultimately it's not. But there are ways to make the experience easier, I think is what I heard. I want to add to that a little bit. I also don't think it's possible to totally eradicate that because we are human and we're built to our brains are built to tell stories. That's what it wants. That's what they want to do. It's collecting information over the course of our lives. It's always putting information together in weird ways. It's always bringing stuff from the past into the front. So it's doing what it's doing. What I like to think of is what I like to say for myself is, and I say this to my clients, is that we might not eradicate the behavior entirely in our lifetime, but what I can do is make the experience less frequent, shorter in duration, and less intense. I learned that from my very first therapist. So less frequent, shorter in duration, and less intense. So I do find that as I get older and as I put stuff into practice and as I become more aware of who I am and what I'm about, that these moments of needing to get things right are less frequent. There are times when I can I just started teaching yoga again, and I taught my first class in, I think, 3 or 4 years, just a couple weeks ago. And I stumbled over things and it did not affect me one bit. It didn't, I wasn't embarrassed. I laughed at myself. I made fun of myself. Um, and I trusted that the students knew what they needed to do. And we partnered in that experience. That was a moment where I cared not at all. Right. And then for some strange reason, I made this joke earlier, but like inevitably my email newsletter will go out and there will be a word missing in a sentence, a whole word, forget a comma, but a word. And I will see it after I thought I edited it. And there's a good 30 minutes of beating myself up about, oh, I can never get the editing right. Such a small thing that probably most people don't even notice anyway. And so, I'm noticing that could have been a spiral for a couple of days. Those are minutes for me now. The things that used to send me reeling, 5-10 years ago are a blip, and they are less frequent and very short in duration. And I think that's what I like to hope to get to is the shrinking of the experience. What do you think of that?
I love that the shrinking of the experience. As you were relating from your experience, uh, one of the things that I like to remember about other people and also remember for myself is sometimes how someone shows up or what someone does, that might actually be the very best they can do. It may be imperfect to us, or how we show up, or whatever it is that we do may be imperfect to someone else. That might also be the best that we can do. And when I have reframed that, it is like a glass of icy cold water on a super hot, humid day. It's like, it is okay that we exist in this imperfection. And it is okay for us to have an air of forgiveness and compassion whenever it is that we see imperfection. The other thing, and this is the beauty of getting older, and this is where you tell me I don't look like a woman in her mid 50s.
Not even
But,
close.
but it, you realize how fragile life actually is. It's, it really is. It's almost like this beautiful, delicate piece of lace or crochet or that, someone made hundreds of years ago. And once we have a better appreciated understanding of how fragile life actually is, it becomes easier to say, do I choose to get hyped up about this particular thing? Or will I find a way to live with it? You might not get over it right away, but can you find a way to live with it? And for me, as I'm getting older and I see my parents getting older, and I know that you lost your father a few years ago. This idea of mortality really hits home, and this idea of fragility of life really hits home. And knowing that life is fragile, what am I going to get amped up about? And what am I going to say? Whatever, dude, we'll try it again. And if it's not perfect the following time after that, so be it. That is the best I can actually do.
Yeah. Can I find a way to live with it? Like, that's a really easeful, compromising way to look at something. Can I let this go? Can I find a way to live with this? What am I getting amped up about this for? Is this, I like to look at, is it 6 weeks from now or next week at this time, am I going to care about this? Will this have really affected my life and who I am? No. Okay. I gotta let this go. And it's a choice. Letting go is a choice. It's an active choice. It is not something that someone is just able to do. And how do people just let things go? They just look like they just let it go. I'm like, no, they choose. They choose to let it go. I'm choosing to turn away from this. This is no longer my reality. This is done. I'm turning this way now. It's a choice. And I always feel like you said, a really cold glass of water for me is the idea that I always have a choice. I don't always love my options every time, but I do always have a choice. And can I find a way to live with this? May not be the ideal option, but it is a choice. And it does create more ease. And the older
Yeah,
I
and
get,
and sorry to jump in.
no, please.
This idea of I want to be clear is, can I find a way to live with it? Isn't about settling. It's not about like convincing ourselves that a shit sandwich is a Las Vegas buffet. It's more of there are any number of things that I could care about in this particular moment. What is the thing that is most important to me based on my value set or what I'm trying to accomplish or so on and so forth? And the can I find a way to live with it is, I can't assign equal value to every single thing. So how am I clear about that which is most important to me and care for that? And the other things that don't matter to me quite as much, whatever, dude,
Hmm.
not my choice. And I am not going to give it a lot of attention or energy because it would deviate from that which is very important to me.
Yeah. So the last question I was going to ask you, which you kind of have already answered throughout the whole conversation, is what, if anything, can people do to help themselves start to let things go a little more? And I'm going to recap and then you tell me if I missed anything. One was understanding your own triggers, the moments and times and experiences where you have the propensity to get really intense and be perfect about things. The other is looking at your environment and how is it set up? Who is in the environment? What the environment is, who you are in the environment, etc. And is it set up to support you in that moment of forgiveness of yourself? And then this last piece you said was assigning. I can't assign the same. What did you say? I can't assign the same
I
value,
can't assign equal value to
equal
every
value.
single thing.
Right. So did I get all those things right?
Yeah. And underpinning all of that is an exercise I like to do with my clients, and I'm sure you do as well, is, well, what are your values? And it's astonishing to me that people have, it's not that they don't know that they have values or what their values might be, but they've never been asked to articulate it clearly. So when you say, what are your top 3 values or your top 5 values, or any number of exercises that you can do to do that, it's all right, well, how do you create the environment that is consistent with those values? Or how do you be with people so that you're with them and still align with your values? And then once that stuff is identified up front, then the environment becomes easier to suss out. Understanding your triggers become easier to suss out because they're always attached to what your values might be, and when something or someone has violated a value. So values first, and then the other stuff comes after that, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Okay, I think this is a good place for us to pause, potentially until next time. And thank you so much for doing this with me again, for reminding me to forgive myself about, being imperfect, and for making this episode super valuable and just being here with me. So,
Thank you. This
yeah,
was so much fun. I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship, and yeah, let's remember to love on ourselves a little
yeah.
bit more.
Yeah. I will put your contact information and ways to get a hold of you or find you in the show notes, Parissa, so people can reach out to you if they want to know more. And until then, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, lots of love and big energy. See you soon.